All right, well, good afternoon and welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Andrew Daphne. I'm the Instruction and Outreach Librarian at the New Jersey State Library, and it's my pleasure to present Stephanie Schwartz today from the Historical Society of Princeton. Stephanie is the Curator of Collections and Research at the Historical Society of Princeton, and prior to becoming Curator in 2016, she served as a Historical Society of Princeton's Research Assistant, answering all external and in-house inquiries using the HSP collections. She now oversees all collections management and research services at HSP. She also works with staff to develop museum exhibitions and collection-based programming. She holds a BA in History and a Certificate in Museum Studies from Connecticut College and an MS in Archives Management from Simon's College. She has also worked at HBO, the Schomburg Center for Research in Black Culture, the New Jersey State Archives, and the Mercer County Library System. So welcome, Stephanie. Thank you for agreeing to present today. Before we jump into Stephanie's presentation, just a few housekeeping items to go over, as always. If you do have any questions, please feel free to submit them at any time using the questions box in the dashboard. You can email me directly. My email address is on the screen. We'd be happy to answer them at the end of her presentation. There will be a survey that will be available at the end of the webinar, as well as in a follow-up email. We always ask if you have time, please complete the survey. We always greatly appreciate your feedback. And if you're looking for more information about the Historical Society of Princeton, the records that they have, some of the events, exhibitions that they're doing, you can visit their address on the screen right there. One last thing before we jump in is just a brief overview of the GoToWebinar dashboard. This is what your dashboard should look like if you're using a laptop or desktop. Whether you're using PC or Mac, it doesn't matter. If you're using a mobile device, the interface is going to look different depending on the device you're using, but all the features will be there. If you don't see this, look for this orange box with a white arrow at the top left or right-hand side of your screen. That will open and close the dashboard. At any time, if you have problems, there is a raise hand button you can hit, and then that'll alert me, and I will send you a message and hopefully be able to help you. Even though it shows handouts in this demo, there are no handouts for today. However, this session is being recorded, and everybody who registered will get a copy of the recording. And lastly, if you do have any questions, there is the questions box here. You can just type in your questions, hit send, and we'd be happy to answer them for you. So that is everything that I have for you. So it was my pleasure to turn it over to Stephanie.
All right. I'm going to share my screen. Hold on. Make certain we get what we're supposed to be getting up there. Come on. There we go.
Looks good.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today during your lunch hour. As Andrew mentioned, my name is Stephanie Schwartz, and I am the Curator of Collections and Research at the Historical Society of Princeton. I am an archivist by training, and I've worked at HSP in a variety of collection roles since 2012. And I currently oversee HSP's collections management and research services and develop much of our collections-based programming. I also work alongside our executive director to curate both on-site and off-site exhibitions. So, founded in 1938, the Historical Society of Princeton is a museum and research center dedicated to preserving, interpreting, and sharing the history of Princeton, New Jersey. We are headquartered near the Princeton battlefield at the Updike Farmstead, pictured here, a 6-acre property with a late 18th century farmhouse, large barn, and several other outbuildings. We, like so many other institutions, have been operating remotely this past year, but when we are open, the farmstead houses a museum that interprets Princeton's rich history through changing and permanent exhibitions, space for educational and community programs, and our HSP staff offices. The core mission of the Historical Society of Princeton is to deliver quality and inspiring history education to the Princeton community and beyond. And we do this through four main channels: stewardship of historical collections, thoughtful and relevant exhibitions, engaging public programs, and robust co-curricular support for schools. Over the past year, HSP staff have worked creatively to successfully continue these efforts in all four of these areas, despite the challenges presented by social distancing and COVID restrictions. At the start of the pandemic, we quickly pivoted to offering a variety of virtual programs on several platforms, from social media to Zoom. HSP was one of only 4 organizations in the state of New Jersey to receive the National Endowment for the Humanities CARES Act Relief Grant, which we felt was a strong vote of confidence in our pandemic virtual programming. Last March, we quickly launched History at Home, a robust suite of online programs and resources our audience could enjoy virtually. Offerings on this page included digital exhibitions, virtual walking tours, recorded public programs, and collection-based diversions. The page has had over 3,000 views since the start of the pandemic, and we continue to develop and add new features regularly. We have also been keeping a daily schedule of on all our social media platforms, with themed days dedicated to such topics as local women's history, Albert Einstein, and our Princeton History Walking Tour. In total, we have written and shared nearly 300 different history stories and collections since last March. Our audience for these stories has been strong, with a 460% increase in our post reach and a 20% increase in the number of followers on our social media since 2019. Now, our core asset at HSP is our remarkable collection, which underscores all our programming and storytelling. We hold over 2,000 objects, almost 900 manuscript collections, some of which are several linear feet, more than 2,000 large maps and architectural drawings, and approximately 35,000 historic photographs. Our photo collections are of particular strength. These include glass plate negatives from 3 local photography studios circa 1880s through 1940s, as well as photographs taken for the Princeton Packet newspaper throughout the 1980s and 1990s. We are best known, however, for our Albert Einstein materials, which is the largest collection of 3-dimensional Albert Einstein belongings in the world. We steward a collection containing 65 pieces of Einstein's furniture from his home in Princeton, various personal belongings, including his pipe pictured here, and a large array of related ephemera. When the Einstein Museum at Landau's on Nassau Street closed this past January, the Landau brothers honored us by contributing the contents of their museum to the HSP collection. Now, remote work offered us the opportunity to make great strides in collections digitization and the uploading of collections information to our Past Perfect online digital database, pictured here. All digital collections, finding aids, and inventories now live in a well-organized cloud drive that staff can search and access remotely. And the collections team next prioritized adding nearly 500 digitized manuscript items to our online database, giving the public greater remote access to our holdings as well. As a result, our collections database has had its busiest year yet, with almost 9,000 sessions, a 30% increase over the past year. And in addition to what we added this year, there are more than 4,000 photographs on the digital database and almost 900 manuscript descriptions that are searchable online. We also continue to offer our research services over the past year, receiving and responding to almost 200 historical research inquiries. Our collections and research assistant, who manages most of the incoming requests, and he supervises our reading room when our offices are open. And we pride ourselves in that whenever we cannot provide assistance, we make certain to direct patrons to other institutions that might be able to help answer your questions. We recently digitized 300 at-risk audio cassette tapes in our collection with the support of a New Jersey Historical Commission grant. And we are now in the process of cataloging the oral history interviews contained within. Collections include the oral history collection of the Princeton History Project, an early oral history initiative during the 1970s and 1980s that documented the stories of Princeton residents alive at the turn of the century. Interviews conducted by author Jamie Sayin in the 1970s with Albert Einstein's friends and colleagues. And oral histories from the residents of Princeton's historic African American and Italian American communities, including interviews conducted by author Catherine Watterson for her best-selling book, I Hear My People Singing, Voices of African American Princeton. HSP continues to actively add to our holdings, and we regularly accept donations of materials that help us document the history of the Princeton area and its role in state and national history. Part of History at Home was our Collecting COVID-19 initiative, a concerted effort to collect items that would, in the future, tell the story of the COVID-19 pandemic and how the Princeton community coped with the crisis. Acquisitions included a bottle of locally produced hand sanitizer distilled by Sarah Lynn Mountain Spirits, the downtown mask wearing and outdoor dining signage designed by the Arts Council of Princeton, and oral histories recorded as part of our collaborative Voices of Princeton project. On the exhibition side of things, the grounds at Updike Farmstead remained open for visitors, allowing access to our outdoor farmstead history trail interpretive signage and our digital agricultural history exhibit, the Garden State History Garden. We also pivoted our planned 19th Amendment Centennial Women's Suffrage exhibition, which was designed to be a panel exhibition at the Princeton Public Library, to a digital format that is freely accessible online. And we put our past Princeton Public Library panel exhibitions online as part of our History at Home offerings. These exhibitions, once digitized, reached 700 people last year. Now for public programs, HSP has continued to offer a wide array of our signature public programs virtually this past year, often in collaboration with our phenomenal community partners. We offered over a dozen live virtual lectures, workshops, and events for adults this past year, reaching 1,500 people from all over the world. These programs included an open archive of healthcare-related historical material from HSP's collection and a collaborative series with the Witherspoon-Jackson Historical and Cultural Society, in which we dove deeply into the history of racism in Princeton through close readings of place and documents. We continued our popular adult outreach programs to senior centers, libraries, and other institutions as well, presenting nearly a dozen private lecture programs that reached nearly 800 people. Our signature walking tour program also continued digitally with 1,200 digital participants in the Albert E. Hines Memorial Tour of African American life in Princeton, and 450 digital participants in the Green Oval Tour, a snapshot of 18th century Princeton. At the beginning of July, to coincide with the Disney Plus release of Hamilton, we debuted a brand new digital tour exploring the myths and the true stories of places in Princeton connected to the musical's characters of Alexander Hamilton, George Washington, Aaron Burr Jr., and other historical figures represented. This virtual tour has proven to be extremely popular with over 13,000 views since its launch. And finally, we continue to provide co-curricular support for schools during the past year. In the spring, we always provide downtown educational walking tours to each third grade class in the Princeton Public Schools. This year, we developed custom videos for 10 historic sites with their stories and related primary sources. We were able to provide these to teachers, along with a checking for understanding question and response activity suggestion for each site. We also continued our partnership with the Princeton High School Racial Literacy and Justice course, virtually offering our interactive primary source-based program about urban renewal and Palmer Square to the students. And we also completed our 2-year-long residency at Johnson Park School, during which we piloted 21 hands-on local history projects using primary sources. Projects have ranged from students chartering their own canal companies to first-person journaling about the impacts of the Great Depression in Princeton, using evidence from real-life unemployment relief applications. So even despite all the challenges, it has been a busy year at the Historical Society of Princeton, and our small staff has been working hard to continue to advance our mission and plan for the future ahead. And I know that was a lot of information all at once. I'm happy to go into more detail about any of the projects I discussed or our collections and services, should anyone have any questions.
All right, thank you, Stephanie. Yes, if anybody has any questions, if you want to learn more about the specific collections that they have, the research that's being done, if you have some genealogy related items that you would like to quiz Stephanie on and see if she can provide some answers, please feel free to ask them in the questions box. You can email me directly if you want. We'll be happy to take your questions.
Stephanie, if you don't mind, could you tell us a little bit more about, I know how I'm a huge Hamilton fan, and I'm sure many other people are. Could you tell us a little bit more about how that project came into being and like some specific cool examples from there?
That was a huge pet project of mine. We're an Office of Musical Theater people, and we're all very excited about Hamilton, and particularly the Princeton connections that we were able to find. A lot of them, it was not very hard of a stretch to find. There are the ones about how Alexander Hamilton fought in the Battle of Princeton during the American Revolution, or about how Aaron Burr's father was president of Princeton University, and then Aaron Burr went there and he's buried in Princeton Cemetery. So there's obvious connections like that, but then also you had Lafayette coming to Princeton during his tour of the United States in the 1800s. You had Rochambeau camping in Princeton, and the French troops camping in Princeton on their way to Yorktown. So there were all these really fun connections we were able to find that drew on the musical's lyrics that we kind of mined for whatever fun tidbits. And it was a really fun project, and I'm really happy with how it turned out, and I'm glad that it's popular.
Awesome, thank you.
So, and that's available through our web. You can find that through our website. It's on the History at Home page. So I definitely recommend people checking it out.
Great. Could I ask you just kind of more of a pandemic question? What have you personally in the last year, like what have you been most proud of that the Princeton Historical Society has accomplished, and in terms of your service that you've done this year?
For me, having the excuse to really digitize our collection has been that's something that's super important to me on the collection stewardship end, and the pandemic really gave me the excuse and the time to focus on that, and really could say, like, now is important for us to make this accessible and online, and to mine whatever scans that we have and catalog them, so that way, because people can't come in to use our collections. So that's something that I had been fighting for a very long time, and coincided nicely with the needs of our researchers during the pandemic. So I was able to see that project move forward. Was very exciting.
Wonderful. And do you, I'm going to ask you a very difficult question now. Is there a favorite part of your collection? Like, what do you most enjoy about the collection at Historical Society of Princeton, and what do you like delving into?
Oh, I mean, I love our photo collections. It's, even to this day, like, just the quality of glass plate negatives is astounding, and continuing to digitize and describe those is such a joy, because they're just so beautiful and they capture life in Princeton so well. I also, a surprising strength of our collection that I don't get to explore all that often is the American Civil War. We actually did an entire exhibition on the American Civil War in the past in Princeton, and you wouldn't think that would be a strength of Princeton history. There was no major Civil War action near Princeton, New Jersey, but we have some great characters in that story, including a Civil War spy, a Civil War nurse from Princeton. We have some great pieces of ephemera in our collection, some really great Civil War period letters. There was a member of the Stockton family from Princeton who was a general in the Union Army and was a supporter of abolition. So there are a lot of really excellent stories there that are a treasure trove to go through.
Awesome.
All right, so we have some questions coming in. How long and how many people worked on the digitization?
So for that project, that was primarily, we mined any scans that had been created for previous exhibition. We started with those. So any materials, and we also mined previous exhibitions for information when cataloging. So there was any staff that had worked on previous exhibitions certainly contributed to that effort. During the past year, we pivoted a lot of our visitor services staff to collections, and they did a lot of work with me in cataloging collections materials over the past year. So there were about a staff of me, our collections and research assistant, and then 2 part-time staff members working on that.
Another person says, "Hi, Stephanie. Thanks for this presentation. I'm on a committee planning the YWCA's 100-year anniversary. Would you know if there are any early photos of the YWCA, which one had a Nassau Street office?"
That's something I think I have a research injury I have to get back to you about, but that's something I would have to look into. I know we have a really great YMCA photograph collection, but I don't know how well the YWCA is represented within that. So I would need to search a little more closely. Off the top of my head, I do not know.
What has been your favorite record collection to work with?
I also really enjoy our collection of Stockton family papers that we are very fortunate to have. That is a 15-box collection and dates all the way back to the 1700s. It includes letters in there from Annis Boudinot Stockton, and we also letters from her husband Richard Stockton, who signed the Declaration of Independence for New Jersey. And we've been working to better catalog that collection over the past few years, and there really is some fabulous stuff in there.
What is the oldest artifact in the collection?
Ooh. That probably is some Native American artifacts that we have, that were archaeological artifacts that were found, many of which were found on the grounds of the Updike farmstead by the Updike family, and then given to us, including an effigy pestle that I think that is significant.
What seems to be your most popular collection or record?
Ooh. Our photo collections are the most easily accessible because we have the 4,000 of those online. So we get lots of people doing house research through those and reproduction requests in that sense. The Stockton papers we're well known for having those. So those are accessed a lot as well. And yeah, I would say those ones are up there.
Alrighty, well, if nobody has any other questions, then we can go ahead and end it there for this overview of the Historical Society of Princeton. I'd like to thank you, Stephanie, for taking the time to share the information with us. I'd like to thank our audience members who have joined today. Again, if you have any questions, you can always reach out to Stephanie. I'll make sure her contact information is provided when you have the link to the recording, in case there's something you missed or you wanted to share with other people. And I'd just like to end by saying be safe, be well, and hopefully we can see you soon.
Yeah, feel free to reach out if you have anything else. Thank you.